Hi, guys, and welcome to the Horror Room. So, this week I thought we would have a little discussion about the state of physical media and when it comes to collecting. Because obviously, there's people like myself and many others who have been collecting for years, and there's probably some people that are, just getting into the hobby or maybe have not been in it as long as we have. Because the state of physical media changed about 5 years ago. Um, Before the pandemic hit, people were kind of getting comfortable with streaming and options like that, and sometimes those can be decent options, but usually you have way too much to watch. They won't have certain movies you want to see, so it can be a difficult landscape to navigate. So I'm kind of making this as a little refresher for the veterans and a bit of a guide for the new people getting into the hobby. Um, So let's start with the pros of collecting physical media. Now, obviously, there's a ton of movies on physical media that have yet to be streamed or had ways that you can purchase them digitally or even new ways to purchase them. There's lots of movies from like older releases that are incredibly hard to find. Some of them are still even stuck on older formats like VHS. Um, so sometimes, getting a physical copy of a movie that's a little harder to find, it's good because then you have it, you can watch it whenever you want. You don't have to worry about, trying to find it when you're in the mood. Boom, it's right there. The second thing I would say is pretty good about physical media is there's a lot of other people just like you that enjoy most of these movies. Um, Depending on the format, there's different groups you can join. Like there's specifically ones who collect VHS, Laserdisc. Then you have people that collect the more boutique labels, like your Blu-rays and 4Ks. So it could be good to get into a community like that and kind of find what your niche is, or if you're trying to collect a bunch of different things. And also, sometimes the price can be a good reason. Now, if you're paying for a subscription service, it adds up over time, especially monthly. And the chance that you're going to have time to watch a ton of movies, especially every day if you're working, it's very slim. So it's nice to have the option. You say, hey, I want to watch Street Trash, but it's not streaming anywhere. But I have it at home, so I know I can watch it whenever I want. So yeah, that's kind of nice. But then you have the downside of collecting physical media. Number one, the obvious problem, which pushed a lot of people to streaming, is the space it takes up. Now, there are people who will collect every single movie imaginable, and I've seen those collections, and they are ridiculous. They are absurd. But if you got the room for it and it's not too intrusive, great, go for it. But it can also be pretty costly, so that's another thing to keep in mind. Um, you can find good deals at like Goodwill and thrift stores, sometimes even Facebook Marketplace, and hell, the rare time you can find a good deal on eBay. You just got to be smart about it and look for them. Um, but it does still add up over time. But like I said, there's different ways around that. One of the other downsides to physical media is depending on the format. Um, Here in recent months, I think everyone's heard about the Warner Brothers disc rot problem, where like older box sets and DVDs were having problems. I think Tales from the Crypt was one of them, but I checked mine. I didn't watch it, but the discs look fine to me. So hopefully they're still fine. And it might be the older releases. I think that was a newer one. Um, so yeah, there's problems like that. If you buy VHS, there's obviously the mold issue, which if you know how to take care of it and it's not a big amount, I'd say go for it. But if not, don't bother. Um, and then you got like Laserdisc; those tend to have warping or disc rot. Um, and it can also be expensive if you're collecting older formats, given the technology. There's not really any VCR or Laserdisc repair shops in abundance. I mean, hell, you probably would be struggling to find a DVD repair shop. Now there are small niche stores like You Break We Fix, Um, they more specialize in like game systems and computers, which if you're using a game system to watch DVDs and Blu-rays, you're a-okay. But I don't think you're going to go in there with a Betamax player and say, "Hey, I need this fixed." It's just not plausible. Now, if you know someone that knows how to repair them, or you're interested in teaching yourself, I'm sure there's plenty of guides out there. Or you can just take the risk and buy a bunch of cheap VCRs and hope they work. I've done that myself, and it hasn't worked out very well. So let's just hope my VCRs last for a while. Um, but that's kind of the pros and cons of collecting. There's more, but I just figured I'd give you some simple ideas. Now let's talk about the actual collecting of physical media. Nowadays, there's a lot less options when it comes to it. Used to be every store you'd go to, they'd have a DVD section. Uh, I know nowadays it's mainly just Walmart. And Walmart even is kind of going a little down. They used to have those big $5 bins, which a lot of people swear by, but those are all gone. And I've heard that some Walmarts are even condensing their DVD section, which it's to be expected. They've got those little uh, sections for like anime and cartoons and horror, and those are kind of spliced throughout. So that's taking spots, and then there's also the vinyl section taking a little chunk too. Um, but you can't go to like Best Buy or Target to get movies anymore because they've stopped carrying movies, which is pretty weird to say. Like it used to be, I think I'd put Target right up there in terms of like what kind of movies they had. Um, and then like I guess some people consider Blockbuster good, but I always thought their prices were a little crazy. But you still have secondhand stores like your game stores. They usually carry movies as well. You might find the occasional mom and pop video store that still rents out or sells DVDs and stuff. It's getting a little harder to find those in this day and age. But the main focus that you're going to find a lot of this stuff is flea markets, antique stores, rummage sales, garage sales, looking on marketplace and stuff like that. And it's a little hit or miss because depending on what you're looking for, um, it's going to be harder to find. If you're especially collecting horror movies, it's really hard to find not only movies that you're looking for, but good deals on those movies. Unless you're looking for like run of the mill '90s movies, because um, just as an example, Scream One, you could probably find this almost anywhere. Now there's different versions, and the variants are a little harder to find. But if you just want basic Scream One, you can usually find it for like a dollar to $5, which isn't terrible. Um, but if you're looking for something like one of the Friday the 13th movies, good luck. You're probably going to have to actually find someone selling it and buy it. Now, I got lucky a while back and I bought the collection on VHS for like, I think it was $50, which at the time sounded crazy, but I'm so glad I did it because these tapes individually have skyrocketed. And it's like kind of one of the series that people are after besides the Nightmare on Elm Street ones because they had the box set with the pictures on the side. Now I have the DVD one, but I don't have the VHS one, which is pretty cool. Um, and then of course you have your different versions of movies, like I said with the Scream ones. Now let's take for example my favorite movie, Class Reunion Massacre. I know we're going to talk about this a ton. Um, this release was only $15. When I found it, I was like, "Oh, hey, I'm gonna grab that because I remembered it from my childhood." $15, not too bad. Not a very high price, but not super cheap. But hey, it's a movie you don't see a lot. But then on the other hand, if you want the big box, which obviously, big box was the ploy by a lot of companies to kind of grab your attention and say, "Hey, buy this, rent this." And the big box was a great method to do it because it kind of was like the Disney clamshells. Those were a little bigger. But these are even bigger than the Disney releases, I believe. And they mostly were horror movies or action or sometimes erotic. Ooh. Um, But yeah, so you'd have those, and those tend to be really expensive. That one that I got was on the lower end, which I think I paid 100 for it, but I've seen some that go for 300 to 400, and yikes! Like I'd love to get the Cannibal Ferox big box or Terror on Tape, but those are some of the heavy hitters. And there's some out there that are even harder to find, like the Herschel Gordon Lewis movies, like Color Me Blood Red or A Thousand Maniacs. Those are kind of harder to find. So yeah, just take that into consideration when you start collecting. Go to your Goodwills, pick up, if you find some commons, if they're $1 each, grab them. And if you have somebody to trade them with, or you have a local store that buys them, do some store credit. That's what I tend to do. One of the places I go to that has DVDs, the Exchange. Don't know if you guys have an Exchange, but they basically carry music, games, and movies. Uh, I used to go there for the games, but now I tend to focus more on the movies. And I found some really good horror movies there. It's just you probably don't want to go there every week. You want to like give it like a couple weeks and then go back. And they usually do store credit at a higher rate. So that means if you're trading in some stuff, like let's say you got an old Wii or something that you don't use, they'll buy it. They'll give you a lot more in store credit, and then you can turn around and flip that into horror movies for your collection. Now, granted, you're not going to get any VHS. I've seen them there on occasion, but of course they sell them for basically eBay prices. So you're probably going to get like DVDs, Blu-rays, maybe a 4K. And depending on what you're looking for, you can get some pretty cheap DVDs there from like $3 to $5. Sometimes they've had Blu-rays for $5. So it's a good way to bulk up your collection. But there are certain titles where you're eventually going to have to spend a little more money, especially if you want stuff from like the 80s and the 70s. A lot of that can get pretty pricey. And you also want to think about the release. There's multiple releases for different movies like Halloween. Halloween's been released so many damn times. Now, you can get them all if you want. Good luck. There's like a ton, just like Night of the Living Dead. Um, or you can focus on like, hey, I want to get the 4K release. I would like to get the box set. That's another one. Good luck. So yeah, there's lots of options out there. And I would just say, don't get discouraged if you're collecting and you're not finding stuff. And also, if you're somebody who collects to resell, I would say, yeah, you want to make a little bit of a profit, but don't gouge people because it really it's a bad thing for the hobby in general. You don't want to be that guy that's like, hey, I bought this for $1 and I'm selling it for 10. That's insane. Yeah, make a little bit of money. If it's a harder to find release, do your research, be fair about it, but help spread the love of horror to your fellow collector. Don't gatekeep because we definitely don't want that. But yeah, so that's my little guide to collecting. I just kind of wanted to keep it a little simple. And like I said, if you've already been in the hobby for a while, you probably know most of this. And I will say a tip for you guys, for the people who have been collecting a while. If you feel like you've got too many movies, which I know is kind of terrible to say, maybe look at some of your versions and see if there's any that you can live without. I did that a while back with my horror movies because if you can believe it, I had even more than this before. And I went through and I watched some, and there was some that I didn't enjoy. I probably should have kept some of the rare titles, but I didn't. So, I traded those in, got some store credit, flipped them into other movies and stuff. Or if you have somebody else that's just starting or is after like a certain movie, say, hey, I got an extra copy of Evil Dead. Here you go. It's just something nice to do. And it's kind of a good way to share your love of horror with your friends, especially if they're into horror. So yeah, thanks for watching. Should have a new video next week. Sorry about forgetting the last Sunday's video and posting on Monday. I don't know. I was just brain dead, apparently. Not dead alive, brain dead. But yeah, Stay tuned next week, and I'll have a new video for you.